والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين. Inshallah, we will start our session today by verses from the Holy Quran. Student Osama Ali, PhD student in CIS. Inshallah, we will recite some verses from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون فرحين بما آتاهم الله من فضله ويستبشرون بالذين لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. يستبشرون بنعمة من الله وفضل وأن الله لا يضيع أجر المؤمنين الذين استجابوا لله والرسول من بعد ما أصابهم القرح للذين أحسنوا منهم واتقوا أجر عظيم. الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. فانقلبوا بنعمة من الله وفضل لم يمسسهم سوء واتبعوا رضوان الله والله ذو فضل عظيم. إنما ذلكم الشيطان يخوف أولياءه فلا تخافوهم وخافون إن كنتم مؤمنين. فلا تخافوهم وخافون إن كنتم مؤمنين. ولا يحزنك الذين يسارعون في الكفر إنهم لن يضروا الله شيئا يريد الله ألا يجعل لهم حظا في الآخرة ولهم عذاب عظيم. إن الذين اشتروا الكفر بالإيمان لن يضروا الله شيئا ولهم عذاب أليم. ولا يحسبن الذين كفروا أنما نملي لهم خير لأنفسهم إنما نملي لهم ليزدادوا إثما ولهم عذاب مهين. ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب. ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب وما كان الله ليطلعكم على الغيب ولكن الله يجتبي من رسله من يشاء فآمنوا بالله ورسله وإن تؤمنوا وتتقوا فلكم أجر عظيم. ولا يحسبن الذين يبخلون بما آتاهم الله من فضله هو خيرا لهم بل هو شر لهم سيطوقون ما بخلوا به يوم القيامة ولله ميراث السماوات والأرض والله بما تعملون خبير. صدق الله العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم وبلغ رسوله الكريم. أحسنت. جزاك الله خير. My name is Mustafa Al-Amin from CIS. My name is Mustafa Al-Amin from CIS. I will be the moderator of this session. So at the outset, I would like to welcome you all. Of course, I would like to welcome our Dean, Professor Rajab, and all our guests here today. I would like to start by the verses from the Holy Quran. أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وأن الله على نصرهم لقدير. So today is the 24th since the war is starting in Gaza and Palestine. Israel is waging war of genocide against the Palestinian people. Since the 7th of October, incredible amount of brutality and ruthless behavior, use of indiscriminate violence that have so far claimed over 40,000 victims, both killed and injured. The deliberate targeting of hospitals highlight the complete disregard for the sanctity traditionally offered to humanitarian spaces. What the world is witnessing today is a tragic product of a racist, supremacist, and exclusivist ideology. Israel practices terrorism in all its forms. Despite all the killing destructions Israel has been doing Gaza, and Gaza's resistance is going on. Our brothers, the Mujahideen, the fighter, are doing their best, and we pray for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them victory. Tens of or millions of people around the globe are demonstrating in support of the Palestinian people and their struggle. Today, our events in the CIS is in line with a series of events going on here in the Education City and HPKU. The title of the events is, as you can see, in the line of fire, war crimes on Palestinian hospital. In this session, we unpack this apparent divergence from the ethic of war and examine the moral obligations of parties that are witness to such atrocities. We will start our session with an opening remark from Professor Rajab Shantouk, the Dean of the College of Islamic Study. Then we will listen to the Student Union, PhD student Karman, and then Dareen Abdul Latif, President of the Palestinian Club, also from Student Union. And then Professor Louay Safi, Professor of Islam and Global Affairs at the CIS, will share insights into the Islamic principles of a just war and the foundational ethics that root from them. The last but not least, Dr. Muhammed Mongid, Chairman of the Syrian Medical Association in Qatar, will emphasize the moral complexities surrounding targeting of hospital, health care facilities, and ambulance in Gaza. So, the floor is yours, Professor Rajab.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma ansur man nasra ad-din faj'alna minhum wa khzul man khazala ad-din wa la taj'alna minhum wa'fu anna waghfir lana warhamna fansurna ala al-qawmil kafirin. What we are observing is really very saddening. As if the whole world is watching a movie without intervening. In the West they entertain themselves like in the gladiators in the past, people killing each other, and then they watch and they find this entertaining. And I always had difficulty in understanding what's so entertaining, when people kill each other and then you watch and get some beastly sick pleasure from watching this. And this is exactly what's happening now. The whole world is just watching without any intervention. So what we observe is a recent example of colonization, and we were always taught that colonization ended. Now we are in the age of post-colonialism. But actually, it is not post-colonialism, it is neo-colonialism. And what's happening is nothing different than the old colonization practices. Colonization has always been associated with war crimes. Look at what happened in America, look at what happened in Africa, look at what happened in India. Everywhere, when there is colonization, there is always war crimes. That's why those European Western states, they come in support of what's happening, because their history is full of the same thing. They don't see anything wrong, because this is what they have been doing for the 3 centuries all over the world. Now they commissioned this job to another group. They are doing their dirty job. So they are. And I'm not so surprised, when they don't reject it. So this genocide starts first with dehumanization. Dehumanization. This is what I observed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So first, before killing and committing atrocities and genocide, they dehumanize those victims. And when I heard Palestinians are not human beings, they are animals, I immediately predicted what's coming next. Because this is dehumanization. So if they are animals, then you can do whatever you want with them, because they are not human beings. So anything you do with them is not crime. So this dehumanization phase took place, and after that they started doing what they are doing without any morality or anything. There is a book, Why Did the West Conquer the World? My answer is because they were immoral. The best advantage they had against the colonized was their immorality. No rules, no moral values, no principles. Like those natives, when they made an agreement with the Westerners, they thought they would respect the agreement, but they did not respect. Those natives, they thought if they help those newcomers, let's say in America, they would respect, and appreciate. But they did just opposite. So I think the best advantage they had against those, colonized people was their immorality. Post-truth started with colonization, because post-truth claims there is no values, there is no truth, right? You can create your truth and you don't need to respect any values. So the root of it starts with the colonization. And also associate with colonization not only dehumanization of the subjects of crimes, but also blaming them. Edward Said has a book, Blaming the Victim. Blaming the victim. So Africans are so bad people, natives are so lazy, Indian Americans, they are stupid, they are like out of the age. And then you have the pygmies, like those natives, they are blamed as if they deserved to be colonized, to be killed. They deserve genocide. So today we observe the same pattern, dehumanization, and then atrocities, genocide, and then blaming the victim. So today exactly the same thing is happening. As you know, I do work on human rights, and I argue that only Muslims can genuinely defend human rights. Why? Because this is part of their religion. So for the rest of the world, especially for the Western world, if their principles clash with their values, if their principles clash with their interest, why should they give priority to the values? There is no reason, to give priority to the principles and values. Are you stupid, to sacrifice your interest, for some values? This is how they see it. But for Muslims, because human rights are grounded in our religion, and there's punishment either in this world or in the akhirah, so there is a strong backing. That's why only Muslims, sincere Muslims, can respect and protect human rights. Otherwise, it is based on a flimsy ground. And in case of a clash, between interest and rights of other people, they would just give priority to their interest. There is no binding power. So this is exactly what we observe today. In one of the meetings I attended on human rights, they gave a reward, to a rabbi. He was like a senior person, like a very aged person. He did a lot of work in the field of human rights, and they were giving him this reward. They asked him, could you please summarize your whole life experience in the field of human rights with one sentence? And he said, may God make nobody powerless not to be able to defend his rights. So having rights is not enough to have and enjoy those rights. You have to have power to be able to defend your rights. So today, this is exactly what we are missing. So like Palestinian people, they have rights, but they have no power to be able to defend their rights. So the only solution is to create some kind of symmetry in power relationship, because there is asymmetry now. So there is nothing which can stop those powerful actors in the world. So some kind of balance, some kind of symmetry needs to be created. ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لفسدت الأرض. So this دفع, this balance, symmetry is very much needed today globally in the world. Otherwise, there is no way to stop the atrocities in the world. We as academics, we can contribute, to educate the world opinion, because today not only Muslims but also anybody in the world, regardless of their religion, who are committed to some values, to human rights, they realize what's going on wrong, and they support the Palestinian people in their right cause. But creating and raising awareness is very important, because what's happening on the ground is just tip of the iceberg. In the background, there's media war. In the background, there is culture war. In the background, there is constructing truth, constructing reality, shaping reality. These are going on in the background to blind the world public opinion, to show that Palestinians should be blamed for what's happening. So it is the job of the academics and intellectuals, to deconstruct this superficial reality offered to the world public opinion. And one of the things that we should focus, as we discussed with Dr. Osman and Dr. Mustafa, I thank him first, for organizing this event, and I thank you for coming over, and distinguished scholars, students, all of you. We thought we are academics, instead of doing something like activists do, we should do some academic analysis of what's happening. And the best thing is, analyze war crimes. What's a war crime, and what kind of war crimes are committed there? Okay, what are the next steps, or what are the consequences of committing a war crime? Just to educate ourselves, our students, about this concept of war crimes, because our program, Islam and Global Affairs, mashallah, they are specializing on these issues, and Dr. Mustafa, as the former foreign minister of Sudan, he has experience in these areas. So I thought, if we analyze this in a deep way, it will be good for us, inshallah ta'ala. Once again, I thank all of you, and I offer my best prayers for the innocent souls, who travel to eternity, and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends His help those who are powerless and helpless. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakumullah khair, Professor Rajab, for these kind words. From CIS Student Union, student Dareen Abdul Latif, president of the Palestinian Club, she is going to be our next speaker.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Dareen Abdul Latif, the head of HBKU Palestinian Club. I pray to Allah that the war in Palestine will end soon with the victory to the Muslims, and may Allah protect people in Gaza and accept our martyrs. Just as people in Gaza are sacrificing their lives for victory from Allah, seeking the victory from Allah, we as well should sacrifice ourselves and money and time in order to support them. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, our sister Dareen. Inshallah, also our next speaker also from CIS Student Union, PhD student Karman Hagi is going to be the next speaker.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Kamran Hajiev. I'm a PhD student of Islamic finance. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I want to thank our dear professors for organizing this kind of an event and giving us this opportunity to say our words to the brothers and the sisters, even though we cannot do any action, but at least we are becoming a little bit pleased with our feelings by expressing these feelings with the words. Also, I want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Sham, and in all of the world which are under oppression of the Pharaoh of these days. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mercy on their shuhada and to give healing to their diseased people. Also, about Quds, we as Muslims, we believe that the Quds is the holy land. As all religions, they believe the Quds holy for them, and our religion is the completing the last to all these heathen religions. And we also believe as Muslims that this place is holy, but this is promised to the not to the wrongdoers, not to the oppressors. This land promised to the who will be salihun, yani who has good deeds in this world. So we have a lot of quotings from Quran about the Masjid al-Aqsa. We have our Prophet ﷺ who is said if someone prays in Masjid al-Aqsa, there are some riwayats, they will be multiplied, their reward will be multiplied by 500 times. So this place is for sure holy for us. But for nowadays, as we mentioned, there are war crimes, there are genocide against the Muslims, and we want to ask question to ourselves: why these disasters happening to us? Why we are facing this kind of problems? While we are more than maybe 2 billion in the world, but even though we are facing these problems, and I just want to quote one ayah from Quran Kareem. أولما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثلها قلتم أن هذا قل هو من عند أنفسكم. So when the Sahabi in the war of Uhud, they didn't listen, they didn't obey to Prophet ﷺ, and they disobeyed him, and when they came, they faced defeat, and then they asked that why it happened, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah that if it happened to you, this is because of your sins, this is because of yourself, because you disobeyed Allah. And this is not my personal opinion, this is the ulama of Islam. Even right now they are recalling this, that if something happening to us, Allah aware of that, Allah knows everything happening to us, to Muslims, and Allah says that this is because of ourselves. Also another quotation from Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he wrote a letter to Sa'd ibn al-Waqqas. This is the very famous letter all of us know. I just want to remind us that he advises Sa'd ibn al-Waqqas and his soldiers to avoid the sins, and he is especially pointing that view that if your sins exceeding the enemy's sins, you will be defeated. If now you are defeating the enemy, it's because their sins are greater, bigger than you. Also, when the Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he just reached the Quds, in front of Quds, when he saw the Sahabi, they changed their clothes, image, and what he said to them that نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام. So we have izzah, we have power, we have authority because of Islam. And then he continued his speech that if we will quit this lifestyle, Islamic lifestyle, Allah will take this izzah from us and He will make us again zalil like the Jahiliyyah times. So Islam is now, unfortunately, even though we are more than 2 billion people, Islam is abandoned by most of our ummah. So we need to remark this point. We need to bring up this point to all Muslims that we need to go to our religion if we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the people if they don't start changing themselves. And the point is, as Professor said, I'm like representing our students of CIS. What can we do as students? What our plan should be? I attended some events by the famous professors about Palestinian issue or about the general what is happening to Muslims. What can we do as Muslims? I pointed some, let's say, words I want to share with you. One thing we should know for sure that whatever happening, we should not lose our hope and the motivation. Motivation, why it is important? Because even in that days after Uhud, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed an ayah that وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. So don't be sad, don't yield, because if you are believer in the final, you will be the victory owners. And another ayah, ما كان الله, which our brother Osama, Jazahullah khair, he recited, ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه. Allah will not leave you in this situation. So do not lose your hope, do not lose your motivation. Also, their motivation as Sahabi and our motivation should be like, even though all the world gathered towards us, الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا. Even though they were told that all the world they gathered against you, but what it changed in Muslims, it just a little bit more raised their iman. And we can give an example of this motivation. This Rabi ibn Amir, when Abu Ubayd ibn al-Jarrah sent him to negotiate with Rustam when they had a fight of Qadisiyah, the Persians, they didn't understand what brought them here. They were Arabs, they were like Jahilin. What brought them here? Then Rabi ibn Amir, what he said that he was like 30 years old. He was not old man. He didn't have so much experience from the life. He said that we came here to make slaves of Allah, get out of the slavery of the people and make them slave of Allah again. So what gave them the motivation should give us the same motivation now. Also, we can see in the fight of Uhud or Badr, when the Sahabi, they wanted to go to fight, Ibn Omar, he was like 13 or 14. He was arguing Prophet ﷺ, why you take other guy and you don't take me? Also, in the another side, from the adults, we see the Miqdad, radiallahu anh. He was very old, but he was preparing for the fight also. But now, unfortunately, our ummah, including us, our youngsters, our elders, we lost our motivation, we lost our hope for these things. Another thing is patience, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points this, وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. Another ayat, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sunnah. He is changing. From Prophet ﷺ's time, we can see they faced in Mecca hardships, then they won in Badr, then they had like Murtad wars, then they conquered Persia. All of things as giving glad tidings, and it shows the sunnah of Allah. It is going this tadrij, and by gradually Muslims how they become again superior. And nowadays the Zionists, they are doing the same. They are oppressing. They are oppressing us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us glad tidings that وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا. So Allah promised them, if you come, we will come again. And Allah says that أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيب. So Allah's help is near. Another thing is religiosity. We Muslims, we should consider that وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. We need to turn towards our religion. We should stay to Quran and to Sunnah, close to them. So the final point is to do tawakkul and be yaqeen of our tawakkul, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in yansurkumullahu fala ghaliba lakum. If Allah helps you, nobody can defeat you. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that alaysa Allahu bikafin abdahu. Is Allah not sufficient for a slave? ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه. Whoever put trust in Allah, Allah will be sufficient for them. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. May Allah help again to all our ummah. Thank you for your attention.
جزاك الله
Jazakallah
خير.
khair. Thank you very much.
بارك الله فيك. جزاك الله خير. Student brother Karman. Now our next speaker is Professor Louay Safi, Professor of Islam and Global Affairs at the CIS. He will talk about Islamic principle of a just war and the foundation ethics that rules them. Please.
يا رب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Yeah, I can. This one better. Yes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. To see all of you, albeit in a sad situation because we are witnessing the slaughter of our brothers and sisters in Gaza. They are our brothers and sisters in humanity as well as in faith. So that makes it doubly painful. So the task given to me by my good friend, Professor Mustafa, is to address the question of ethical conduct in war. And it seems to me that this is really something that we need to come back to every now and then in the face of what we have been seeing in the war of Gaza. There are no principles, no rules, no limitations. So I put together a few slides to bring some of the principles that the first time we find them really within the Islamic tradition. You know, in Europe there is the concept of just war, divided. It's called Jus ad bellum, that was put together by Saint Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century. And of course, Saint Thomas took it from the Muslim tradition because his Summa Theologia, much of what he has written really is a sort of translation from Muslim work, and there are many studies to show that that's what he did. So the first time we find really this effort to try to put limitations on power is in the Quran. We don't find that in the New Testament or the Old Testament. And I haven't seen it in some of the Hindu work. Maybe there is somewhere else, but I'm not aware of any ethical principles in anywhere that would put limitation on the use of power, particularly in conflict, in war. So I'm going to go quickly. I have 20 minutes. I'm going to, first of all, say that the source of those limitations that we put on war and the very concept that we have become acquainted with today in the literature, really their source is in the Islamic revelation, mainly in the Quran, but also in the prophetic tradition. So this is where we could find some sources. Our early Muslim scholars addressed those principles when they talked about jihad. So they were discussed under the concept of jihad. But the Quran used the word qital, qatilu, when it comes to war and conflict. And jihad, of course, we know in the Quran is much more broader concepts than the concept of qital. So fighting and war, jihad as a concept can be part of it only because jihad means really, the closest term in English is struggle. When you struggle to achieve something good, that is jihad. And we all know that the Quran used jihad in reference to educating the public and raising awareness. Jahidhum bihi jihadan kabira. So the jihad was used in the context of educating people about the principles of truth that, as Dr. Rajab said, have been completely ignored recently. Not only in terms of conducting wars, and Israel is not the only country that have been used unlimited war against those. The United States have done that frequently. in the last, half a century. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to first of all outline the principles of just war, and then I will go to talk about quickly as well about the conduct of war. So there are rules or principles that guide when war can be justified, when the use of violence against an enemy can be justified. And as you see, there are 5 principles here. The first 2 of them are about the ground of war. When can you conduct war? And the Quran provides only 2 cases where you can have just war. In war against aggression, somebody is bringing their armies, trying to take over your country, your place, your land, your society by force, and that's where war can be justified, to push back, to defend. But there is another example where war can be started not in self-defense, and this is what the Quran talks about when it talks about war against oppression. I'll come back to these 2 points little later. But then you have 2 principles for the justification of war, or what make a war just war, and there are 3 principles about the limit on use of violence. War can be justified, but doesn't mean you could do whatever you want. It doesn't mean that whatever it takes, as we hear often when people try to say, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to win. That is not acceptable in Islam. So the limitation of the use of force will include the principle of reciprocity, and war as a last resort. You don't start with war. You shouldn't be trigger happy like Netanyahu wants immediately, before finding some solution to the conflict, wants really to kill and to control and to push people back through ethnic cleansing. Proportionality in the use of force. You can't, like somebody killed or attacked a small neighborhood, you wipe the whole nation out in the name of I'm fighting back. That's unacceptable. That's not proportional. And then you have to target the only people you have legitimately target would be fighters, but not non-armed civilians. Armed combatants can be targeted, but civilians can never be targeted. That's an important principle, and it has been stated in the Quran, in the prophetic tradition, and Muslim scholars have insisted all throughout, the history of Islamic scholarship, that you cannot attack civilians. Now, war against aggression, of course, I'm going to restrain myself only to mention the Quranic principles, which are very clear. So here, in terms of fighting aggression, you fight invading armies. People putting together wars, armies to invade your country and to subjugate you. There's an attempt to make you servient and subservient to another culture, another society. That it would call for a war against the aggressor. And the ayah in the Quran is clear: fight in the way of Allah against those who fight you, but do not transgress limits. Again, limits must be put on the act of violence. I'll come back to this point, but do not transgress. Allah does not love transgressors. Now, the second principle is war against oppression. And, there are a couple of ayahs that are clearly calling upon people to protect the oppressed. So if you can protect an oppressed community, then you have to do that. Of course, oppression, Muslim scholars define it. It's not like oppression, you don't like what they are doing. Oppression has to be like they are violating life and property. They are killing people with no justification, or they are taking their property. That will be called oppression, and that would require people who can to defend those oppressed. And I think the two ayahs are quite clear. and fight them until there is no persecution, and religion is only to Allah. And by that, of course, religion is to Allah, meaning only those principles that are revealed to humanity through the Tawheedic revelations can stand. And that's what it means. Religion is only for Allah. There is no oppression, there is no forcing people from one religion to another, etc. The other ayah is also quite clear. Reciprocity, and this is again stressing the fact that fighting is not something to do at will and because you want to control another community. Because the Quran calls clearly about to the Muslims, and if they incline to peace, you too should incline to peace. You see, fighting will end as long as the other belligerent army or country decided to set peace, to negotiate for peace. And definitely we don't see that, in the case of Gaza. The Palestinians, there is no negotiation. Either you go out of Gaza so we can take your place, or we'll kill you. I mean, these are the official statements by Israeli officials, which are unacceptable. And not only acceptable in our scriptures, but today, international law has adopted those principles. They become part of the international law. And neither the Israelis, not even the American president, Biden, is heeding those international principles. Proportionality, again, here, but whoever, this is ayah from the Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 194, whoever then acts aggressively against you, inflict injury on them according to the injury they inflicted on you. And be careful of your duty to Allah, and know that Allah is with those who are conscious of Him and of their duty to Him. So this is very clear. It is proportionality. You inflict in the way they inflicted on you, but don't transgress, don't go beyond that, because that will be in violation of your covenant with Allah, with commitment to be His slave and His servant and a faithful person of faith. I have 2 slides to share with you about this is the last principle of the Quran, immunity of non-combatant. The interesting thing about this ayah, it was given as to us as what Allah has instructed the Israelites, which funny, we don't find it in the Torah today. Don't find it there. Somewhere it has disappeared. But it is really stated in the Quran, we ordained to the children of Israel that if any killed a person, unless it be for murder or spreading mischief in the land, it would be as if he killed the entire humanity and vice versa. So you see how grave is targeting innocent people who are not carrying arms, who have not really attempted anything against you, and then you target them in the name of, you belong to the same people. You cannot do that. You cannot really take, this is what we call today collective punishment. So somebody did something wrong to you, and so you punish the whole community. If someone from a certain family killed your son, can you imagine somebody go and wiping the whole family as a just act of retaliation? That is not justice. I'm not going to go over this. This is our 10 really principles of how should we conduct war that the Prophet ﷺ has instructed the Muslims. And they have been collected from different statements by the Prophet ﷺ. And they are all his effort to clarify what the Quran meant, that you don't kill innocent people. You don't kill innocent people. You don't target them. And of course, we have this propaganda that was mentioned by the Quraysh that we are targeting hospitals because Hamas is has some hideout underneath that, of course, with no evidence, with no credible evidence. And even that, I mean, this is a hospital. This is a place of a humanitarian action there. You can't target it. I don't know how you could justify it other than being arrogant and not submitting to any higher truth that will put you in your limitation as a human being. And I think my good friend Dr. Muhammad is going to talk about this targeting of hospitals in Gaza, which is very outrageous, really. It's more outrageous because many powerful nations and leaders are silent and condoning what's happening. These principles that we saw, Abu Bakr Siddiq, the first Khalifa of the law, has put them together in this beautiful statement that he made to an army that was he sent out to fight aggressors and oppressors. He said to them, neither kill a child, nor a woman, nor an aged man. Bring no harm to the trees, nor burn them with fire, especially those which are fruitful. Slay not any of the enemy's flock, save for food. You are likely to pass by people who have devoted themselves to monastic service. Leave them alone. Now, this is really in contrast with what we have heard. I mean, I don't know how many of you have heard the statement by Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, yesterday. He invoked a biblical reference to the fight in Gaza. He made an analogy between the people of Gaza and the Amalek or Amalek. Amalek in the Bible has been mentioned in Samuel, the first book of Samuel, 15:3. Book 15, chapter 3. And that chapter is horrible because it's justifying the killing of men, women, elderly, babies, infants, and animals. And the verse mentioned 3 animals, sheep, camels, and donkeys. So this invocation of the Bible in the war of Gaza is quite alarming, and it has been repeated by a Rabbi Manes Friedman, who has really said, okay, a good war is a quick war, and to make it quick, you do whatever you have. And he said, we can kill civilians if our soldiers are killed. And of course, he is referring to the Bible. So you can see how quite alarming that we are going back into antiquity. I mean, even if we assume, and we cannot assume that this is like an authentic biblical reference. But the biblical reference is ancient antiquity. It's a different. We live in a different world today. The world have worked hard to establish international law to regulate the use of force and to ensure that people have equal dignity. And this is really, I'm going to conclude with this. This is really the crux of the whole matter. The idea of equal dignity, which has been set with absolute clarity in the Quran. And that is why when Muslims were empowered throughout the ancient, the old world, they have always respected the human dignity, regardless of your faith or your ethnicity, because that principle is enshrined, and you are right, Dr. Rajab, enshrined in our revelation. People are equal. They have equal dignity. No one can claim like we are superior or we are supremacist, as we hear today, whether within Europe, Even the United States that cared a lot about, equal dignity seems to be slipping. At least half of the country is slipping toward, okay, whatever it takes, it's all fair game. We can kill, we can to control and to defeat those who disagree with us. We can do whatever we can. So human dignity is at the core of Tawheed, of monotheism. And yes, I agree that the West, of course, I don't think that the West is one West. And we have seen that in these demonstrations, all over Europe. So the West is two Wests. You have the West that's really committed to the principle of Tawheed, monotheism, and who care about human rights and equal dignity. And you have the West who have inherited the Greek and Roman paganism, which really don't believe in equality at all, and believe some people are superior to another, and some people are the children of lesser God. And you see that language when people, in the Jewish and the Christian community sometimes talk about their God and our God as if, it's not the same God. But this is really paganism, attempt to revive this division of humanity, of people of different gods, and then, our God is better than them, and we can have the right to conquer them and do whatever we want. So I will conclude with this. Thank you for your patience. And I'll turn it back to Dr.
Thank you very much, Professor Louay. Very interesting issue. Before I will give the floor to Dr. Mongid, I would like to say that we are very lucky today that Professor Shergawi is with us here. So, inshallah, after Dr. Mongid will deliver his speech, then Professor Shergawi will say a few words about this issue, inshallah. I think all of you know Professor Shergawi.
I guess not all of you. No, he's generalizing it too. I'll introduce myself later on.
Inshallah. So, inshallah, Dr. Mongid, who is the chairman of the Syrian Medical Association in Qatar, he will emphasize his speech and he will talk about the destruction of hospitals, ambulance, and medical facilities in Gaza.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. سبقني الكثير من الأخوة. The speech before me was about what should be. I will speak now what's happening in reality. The title of this lecture is The Dilemma of Targeting Hospital. What is dilemma, first of all? Why we call it dilemma, not a problem, let's say. Dilemma because it's complicated. There's many factors, multiple factors. There's pressure, and you have to take your choice. You have to choose. You cannot keep silent. If you are silent, then you are supporting one of the sides, one of the parties. You cannot be silent. Dilemma in targeting, I'm telling targeting means intentional or not intentional. Let's see. This lecture will prove if this is intentional or no, or by chance, collateral damages. The dilemma of targeting hospital and armed conflicts. It's not only in Gaza, but today we are speaking about Gaza, which is the hot case and the most horrible maybe in the last many years. What happened in 17th October was targeting of Al-Ahli Baptist owned by the church hospital in Gaza. About 500 civilians being killed there. There is a series of condemnations around the world. Somebody said only condemnations, maybe only condemnations, yes. UN Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres said that hospital and medical personnel are protected under the international humanitarian law. WHO Dr. Tedros said that immediate protection of civilians and healthcare is important, and he strongly condemns the attacks. Here we are describing also the case. UN described the case as running on empty dilemma. Empty of no food, no water, no electricity, no fuel. So it's not the usual thing, not only military attack, it is attack on empty. Out of 35 hospitals, 12 now is not working, not functioning. When I prepared the lecture, it was 4, now they are 12, not functioning. Maybe after I finish this lecture, the number will be 14 or 15 hospital not working.
They bombed the Turkish hospital.
Yes,
Just in the news.
yes, you are right. You are right, yes. I will speak about the Turkish hospital, and I'll speak in this lecture about 3 major points. Number 1, about the normative framework. I will talk about the legal part of this. What international humanitarian law says in this. In the second part, I will talk about the reality of targeting hospital as one of the tools of the war. It is one of the tools of the war. It's not by chance. And finally, I will suggest some scenarios how to protect the healthcare facilities and the medical personnel and the injured people from being attacked. The international laws protects medical facilities in times of armed conflict. There is principle of this. I will speak about some points, few points to explain the situation in the international laws. There is principle of distinction. It means the armies, the parties should distinguish between civilians and combatants. So should distinguish between them. It is one of their job to distinguish, not just to kill, not just to destroy the land. They have to distinguish. This is one of their important points. Protection of medical personnel also. Doctors, nurses, healthcare workers should be respected and protected. Red Cross and other organizations can monitor this. Protection of healthcare facilities, like hospital, clinics, healthcare facilities should be also protected and must not attack, damage, or destroy. Not only not attacked, should also be protected. Here we have 2 points. You should not attack. Another point, you have to protect these facilities. Medical units are considered neutral and should be protected from attack. This including ambulance, including healthcare centers. The wounded and sick people have the right to be treated regardless of their affiliation, have the right to be treated by medical personnel. It's important that all parties also to the conflict must allow the free passage of medical personnel, medical equipment, medicines, everything. Medical records also should be protected. Not only the personnel, also the computers, the files, everything should be protected. This is the international law. I'm talking now about international law. I'm not talking about what's happening in Gaza. I'm talking about the international law. Medical records should be protected, and medical units should not be used in any military actions. Here there is a point that even the military hospital also prohibited to attack. If you consider a hospital that this is officially military hospital, it's prohibited to attack and also prohibited to use in military actions on the other side. So military hospital, cars, ambulances, doctors, nurses, drivers, all are protected by the humanitarian laws. Here I will talk about three major laws that to explain to you, to the students also, about the reference of what we are talking about. Number one, the Fourth Geneva Convention, 1949. This convention is primary legal framework governing the protection of civilians during times of armed conflict, including situation of occupation, like in Gaza. This agreement, ratified by all states. How many states there in the UN? 193 states. All states ratified, signed this agreement. It includes several provisions related to healthcare facilities in occupied territories. I will read here only number 16, Article 16, 17, and 18. Prohibition of attack on hospital and other medical facilities, as well as measures to prevent their harm. Again, not allowed to attack, and you have to protect. Number 17, ensuring that the medical personnel are allowed to carry out their duties. Passages in the road, safety of the hospital, everything. Number 18, facilitating the operation of civilian hospitals. This is the Fourth Geneva Convention, is the most important reference for healthcare facilities protection in occupied territories and the international humanitarian law. Two protocols, additional protocols at 1977. These protocols provide additional protection for healthcare facilities and personnel in both international, which is Protocol 1, and non-international armed conflicts in Protocol 2. Article 12 prohibits attack of civilians, ensure protection, so and so, require so and so, so and so. You know everything now. No attack on civilians, no attack on hospital, doctors, cars, in international and non-international armed conflicts. There is a very important principle here I want to highlight: responsibility to protect. 2005. This global commitment is agreed by UN General Assembly at 2005 in order to prevent genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. It has been used in more than 80 UN Security Council resolution on the crisis of many countries in Africa, Libya, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Yemen, etc. Also, this principle is used in more than 50 Human Rights Council resolutions and 13 General Assembly. So it is well recognized and well used principle. I will give you some details here, very few, that this principle is based on 3 pillars. Number 1, the state is responsible, each state is responsible to protect its population from genocide, crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes. Number 2, international assistance. It means when the state need to be assisted, it should be assisted to achieve the protection from genocide and war crimes. Number 3, which we call it collective response. If any state failed in this, then the UN in general, they have the right to interfere to achieve the protection of civilians. This is the international law. Yes, what we have now something different. We have now the lethal law. I want you to imagine you are a doctor. I'm a doctor, Dr. Fuad, many doctors here. We are seeing patients every day, 15 to 20 patients every day. This is the normal thing. We listen to them, know what is they are suffering from, then we make the diagnosis, then we start treatment for 15 to 20 patients per day. Our colleagues in Gaza, out of sudden, from average 15 to 20 patients per day, crisis happen, they have 300, 400, 500 patients a day in front of them, on the ground, all wounded or injured severely. How to manage this? What to do? What to choose? We are facing cases. For every doctor, there is 300 injured personnel in the ground. What to choose? High pressure, high psychological pressure, everything is very catastrophic. You know what they are doing? Can you imagine what they are doing, these doctors, our colleague in Gaza? If somebody is in severe case, they will leave him to die. Because the time spent and effort spent to help this severely injured patient, I can save lives for another 30 patients with medium injury. So they are using this rule. They keep the severely injured to die, and they shift to medium injury to treat them, and the minor injury, they just send them back home or teach them to just therapy, pressure the wound and go home. Have you seen the videos of making stitches for wounded child, 10 years old, without anesthesia? Have you seen it? And the doctor asked him, "Iqra al-Quran, read Quran and think something else while I'm suturing your wound without anesthesia." This is the reality. While doing this, any of our colleagues in Gaza may find his family in the hospital as injured or dead, or receive a call, urgent call from his family that your house and all of your family died. This is happening. This is what's happening now, today. While we are here, what's happening there is what I'm telling you. Let's see this doctor, our colleague, he was there in the hospital, in the Al-Shifa hospital. In Al-Shifa hospital, he get to know that his child is brought to the hospital and he's died. Let's see it. So I updated this slide every day. I'm updating. The lecture should be done, I think it was before 5 days. Every day I'm updating because the number is changing by thousands. The latest, which is yesterday night, we have about 8,000 shuhada, out of them 2,000 women, 3,500 children, and 500 elderly. The wounded are 21,000. We have, from the medical staff, till yesterday night, 124 shahid, 25 ambulances completely destroyed, 32 hospitals, health centers stopped, and 12 hospitals stopped also. The Turkish Friendship Hospital, which is the only cancer hospital in Gaza, is stopped also. Yesterday there was attacks. What to do? You know now why we said it's a dilemma? What to do? How to solve it? It's scenarios, it's suggestions. In the last, now I have 3 minutes more, I will try to mention some solutions, some scenarios. We have to implement the protocols that protect hospitals and medical personnel. We have to make real protection of the medical facilities, not talking about laws. We are facing tanks, air attacks. Our action should not be reading the international law. When there is a criminal guy coming to you, you will not stand in front of him and read the law. He will not stop. He will continue. We have examples on this. In Syria before, they use the basement floors for hospital and leave the whole building as protection for the hospital. This is one of the solutions. If the building of four floors, then you can keep the basement for hospital and the other floors will be for protection. Also, building wide, strong walls around some hospital, some theater, also operation room to protect the patients. Advocacy is very important. What we are doing here is advocacy. I want to thank professors for this lecture and this college also for this Islamic Study College. Education and capacity building. Any person who's working in the field, in the medical field, should be additionally educated about these circumstances, this condition, because he will face it. Even if his town or his city today is safe, tomorrow we don't know. So it should be included in the teaching programs. From another side, also for education, maybe we have to educate more medical personnel, more doctors. We need, because they are killed, so we need more, and nurses and everything. We should have a humanitarian access, always special access for the health worker. Legal protection is also important. I'm not telling that legal aspect is not important. It's important. It's our sharia, it's our backbone, the legal action. We are on the right side. International community engagement is important, and civil community organization. Professor Louay said that the West is too. There is part of them we can, yes, still we can. Yeah, continue, we can talk to them. documentation is very important and is part of education for documentation and for the safety, keep the record safe. I'm talking about not only the medical documents, but also how to photo, how to make videos for the attacks and keep them in a safe place that can be used later on. In this situation, I want to say the verse in Arabic about what was happening. مات الطبيب بطبه ودوائه، مات المداوي والمداوى والذي جلب الدواء. All killed. The doctor, the patient, the pharmacist, the nurses. مات الطبيب بطبه ودوائه، مات المداوي والمداوى والذي جلب الدواء. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. Protecting civilians in Islam discussed in detail with Professor Louay. I want to thank you, Dr. Louay, for this very nice lecture. This nice paint is done by a student in the university here in Qatar. It shows all countries supporting what's happening in Gaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mongid. And last but not least, as I said, we are lucky that Professor Shagaw is with us here, so maybe within 5 minutes or so he can give us a remark about what is happening.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. Thank you, Dr. Rajab.
Do you want him to come here? Or it's okay?
I'll move here.
Yeah, it's okay.
So keep the same tradition. Thank you. Okay. Good to be with you here, and I'm privileged to have listened to two very significant lectures. But before that, let me introduce myself. I am Muhammed Sharqawi. I teach conflict resolution and diplomacy. I served on one of the UN panels of experts. In March 2009, I co-convened with one of my colleagues at the University of George Mason, Dr. Daniel Rutbar, an international conference on civilian devastation in war. And we had Americans, we had Europeans, we had Arab Americans, and we had Arab participants. It was a very interesting debate why civilians are always number one casualty. And in 2012, we published a book with Rowledge with the same title, Civilian Devastation in War and the Ideology of Force. And surprisingly, today, 11 years later, I feel like we did not move from that black spot. The same dilemma. Civilian devastation, even it's getting worse and worse. And I should commend what Dr. Mongid did earlier. He gave us a clear idea how things are worked up between the legal perspective, but also a realistic examination of the situation. So in a way that we live in two worlds, depending on the frame you adopt. If it's legal, you feel that maybe they are safe. If you shift to the realistic perspective, they are killed. So 500 in Al-Ahli hospital. I also like to express my appreciation for Dr. Louay Safi earlier. He also gave us an interesting perspective of how civilians stand within a comparative approach to three main religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And I think this, if I'm going to add to this discussion anything, maybe how far we should entertain this idea of the normative approach or moral politics, whether it's derived from religion, from the international law, from the Convention of Geneva Conventions, from the latest principle added in 2005, responsibility to protect, or we should focus more on what I would call the pragmatics of dealing with civilians in war, regardless whether it's Gaza, and 20 years earlier we had a very similar sad scenario. It was Iraq. Over 1 million Iraqis were killed under power, and at a certain point, certain great powers just turned a blind eye on international, even on the whole UN system. So I would like to talk a little bit about maybe 3 specific points. One, enmity system. What I mean by enmity system, how at a certain point in time we feel we are split between we versus they, in group, out group. And I have noticed that the West, most of the West, I'm talking about the Biden administration, the Sunak administration in London, the Macrons in the Elysee, and even Olaf Scholz, the Olaf Scholz of Germany, they are all siding with this narrative that is derived from this enmity system. We, the West, we, Israel, we should protect Israel, and they, those savages, those animals, those. So this is an issue of an enmity system that breaks down suddenly and gives us the 2 words. And the funny thing is that this enmity system, the split image, is exactly what's happening now at the Security Council. If you take the position of Blinken and Linda Thomas Greenfield, they don't want to look at these, I don't want to use it, I respect the audience, so I'm just trying to figure out how they would name them, basically. Those SOPs, So to them, Israel has called them animals. They are dehumanized, degraded. They have no worth of living at all. So if Israel is after Hamas, suddenly this enmity system justifies the possibility of targeting 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. Now, suddenly, these Hamsawi animals are spread all over the strip. So this is a very dangerous thing when you follow this disparity between us and they. And I think Israel has managed to bring most of the West to this mindset. You have to work with us through this enmity system. Another point that is significant, that we should work on it and we should deconstruct it from the very beginning: collateral damage. Dr. Mongid has talked about the medical team, doctors, nurses, drivers, pharmacists, all those people who are there for the sake of being humanitarian and being humane at the same time. They don't have an issue with this side or that side. No. Imagine now, you are a worker with the UN, humanitarian, whether it's the Red Cross or whatever it is, you cannot access Gaza via Rafah. And if it happens that they let you in and you are going to Al Ahli hospital, for whatever reason, there is a 90% chance that you get killed on the 17th of October. So basically now the collateral damage is manipulated because it happened in Iraq, It's happening now, even now, when things will calm down. When the question rises, why you killed civilians? Well, it's, nature of war. It's collateral damage. So this silhouette of something that was not done intentionally should not go like, swiftly just like that. It's high time we stop accepting the narrative of collateral damage. I don't want to take too much of your time, but maybe I will end with one final remark. It has to do with accepting the discourse or poking the discourse. I mean the discourse, the Israeli-US Western discourse of we are killing a terrorist group in Gaza, therefore we are entitled to killing the whole population, or at least kicking them out towards Sinai, finding another place. So in 47 there was the first Nakba. Palestinians from the West Bank were pushed toward Jordan. Now, if things are left to the Israelis, we are constructing a second Nakba, another segment of the Palestinian population, this time from Gaza, will be pushed toward Sinai. So basically, it's the same cyclical, systematic manipulation of chosen traumas, of catastrophes. And I remember here a very interesting Turkish-American social psychologist, Vamik Volkan. He did wonderful things with his visits to different wars in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia, and he gave us several very interesting concepts. One of them, chosen trauma, another one, chosen glory. So on the 7th of October, the Palestinians had their moment of a chosen glory. For the first time, they did something very powerful. That meant that the national security of Israel was not protected. But on the 17th of the same month, with the killing of those innocents, 500 civilians, medical doctors, and so forth, there is this counter-chosen trauma for the Palestinians, but it's also at the same time, it's a chosen glory for the Israelis. So at every confrontation, when there is a death toll that is high, when there are heavy casualties, that moment is interpreted in two different ways. Chosen glory for the aggressor, chosen trauma for the victims, and vice versa. So what I would like to say now, just in a few words, that how we can change this situation, how we can move from a normative approach to a pragmatic, a real politique-based discourse when we talk to the West, when we talk to the Biden administration or Elysee or any other center of power in Europe, where to start, because we are looking at this very solid coordination, historically speaking, between the Judeo and Christian discourse. They are blended together. However, on our side, how far we have constructed a very similar, consolidated two approaches between the Arab and the Islamic discourse. There are some disagreements. Maybe the Arab approach is there. Sometimes some individuals may have some reservation about whether it's the Islamist or the nationalistic, the Nasiri, the Ba'athist, whatever you have. So my question is, if we try to change this situation, I think it's high time we go beyond reminding the West of its value of failure or its double standard. For the past 8 years, the West has heard it many, many times. but morality, moral politics doesn't help. So how we can change or redress the shortcomings of this, how we can poke the Israeli Western discourse by either trying to zoom on, I mean, human rights is one thing. Like, for example, this principle of responsibility to protect is the highest principle now on the UN gender. I mean, the UN agenda. But I don't see that it has been or it can be implemented easily. It's like when you compare the same Biden administration, October 23, Gaza, Israel, to the same discourse of the Biden administration 2 years earlier in the case of Ukraine. Suddenly you feel that the human rights narrative was very high in the former, but now it's no longer the case. It's basically, it goes sideways. So I don't have a final answer how to reconstruct or push the West to reconsider this discourse of power and moral politics. Now I observe what's been going on at the Security Council, and I've written about the UN, and I can tell you now I'm baffled with the Gaza situation. Now I see this symmetry between two different paradigms. Earlier we were talking about the need, Dr. Mustafa, Dr. Rajab, and myself, we had like a minute but talking about paradigms. I think that now the Gaza war has proved we are facing a competition between two paradigms. Paradigm of power, which is basically who has a veto at the Security Council. Blinken and Linda Thomas Greenfield are the heroes of this power paradigm. I remember a very ancient Greek historian, Thucydides, I think, who said it in one of his sentences, those who have power can act as they please, and those who are weak should bear what they can. So this asymmetry between power and powerlessness is still the same. It's still intact. Back in 1978, Václav Havel gave us a very interesting paper on the powerlessness of power. So is this a way where we can poke the Western discourse? At the same time, the UN system, or what we call the international law, is being shattered between this paradigm of power, Security Council, versus the counter paradigm, values, morals, norms, law, and all these normativities. It's not just one normative. All these normativities are basically left to the General Assembly, to the UNICEF, to the UNRWA, to the UNESCO, maybe even the the International Court of The Hague. So I think now we are losing track of history. With wars and with peace, where things stand now, I think, regardless of about the debate about the reform of the Security Council, whether we should have 5 vetoes or we should expand it, or whatever happens, besides that, the whole mechanism, the whole establishment itself has been divided into two camps. And I think that this is not just now, just not with Gaza, so I would not exaggerate, but I feel that the split of the UN started back in 2011 with the Arab uprising.
Can we engage this point? I think this is worth engaging. Because really, you pointed back toward the need of having these two paradigms. One is about power, meaning power is about truth. Another one is about truth, which what truth we're talking about is about the equality of all people, about that all people have the same value in terms of treatment. It's about principles of what you call law we have to move away. I think we have to stick with it more because that's how the world is responding to the Gaza issue. People have sympathy, those who have attachment to the truth, they feel there is something above us humans that you have to observe and respect. It is that what is moving the people to demonstrate all over the world for Gaza, from India to the States. So let us take, that's what I teach my students. There is a very powerful paradigm, which is paradigm of truth, which is what the Tawhidic traditions, the monotheistic traditions were always about. And there is the paradigm of power, which is the Roman Greek, where people are stratified. Of course, you find some in India trying to go that direction. Stratification of people, you have the demigods, and you have like the people who don't care about because they are like animals. That language they are using. So that's how we really fought it. In the long run, I think it's about parity, which Dr. Rajab pointed. We need to establish parity because there's disparity now. But that's a long-term project. The short term is we have to join hands with people all over the world who want to see this world is controlled by power.
Yeah, but if you excuse me, I mean, party is a wonderful idea, but practically speaking, we cannot expect it happens endless.
I said long time.
But
the short time is.
But my concern.
Stick with one paradigm against the other.
But my concern is when we need to marry the norms with real politics in the West. In other words, yes, there is a very wide popular acceptance and mobilization, those demonstrations all over the place. Fine, but my question, when the impact of those demonstrations translate in public policies at the White House and the Pentagon and at the Secretary of State's office at the Congress and beyond, in a way that we should find a way where we link whatever impact we have achieved among audiences, among the masses, that become a driver of change at the official level. In a way, it's not like just track 2 and civil society. This is, from 1948, most of liberal and well-informed Westerners have agreed on the question, the Palestinian question. But the problem is not the mass, it's not the street, it's not those citizens, but it's mainly the governments. And this is what I would like, we need to link whatever support we have in the West among all those who believe in the same norms, in the same humanity and everything, to become influential in shaping public policy and the decision-making process. If we don't make it the full circle, I think we are going to repeat the same half circle moment. Thank you, and I apologize, I may be overtaken.
Thank you. It's a very, very, very interesting, in fact, discussion. I would like to thank all of you and to thank our speaker, in fact, because of the prayer. And also you have snacks outside. We have to finish it here, but I would like to thank specifically and mainly Professor Shergawi, who we are very lucky that he's here. And I'm going to tell him that your question about how we answer this question, I think this needs a series of lecture. I hope that while you are in Doha, we can conduct at least one of them here and we'll open it for discussion with our colleagues and see what Professor Louay will say also. Thank you very much, and thanks being a speaker. And don't forget that there is snacks here and of course Asr prayer. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yok,